The security alert came through at 11:43 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Michael Torres, a 42-year-old marine biologist who'd owned lakefront property for 15 years, stared at his phone in disbelief as his boathouse camera showed a woman in designer sunglasses and white linen, pants forcing open his padlocked door with a crowbar. Linda Whitmore, the HOA president. This wasn't the first time she'd made his life difficult with her manufactured violations and power trips. But breaking into his private boathouse? That crossed a line she couldn't uncross. What Linda didn't know was that Michael's brother-in-law was Deputy Sheriff Marcus Chun, and Michael had just texted him 3 words: "She's inside now." Before we see how a corrupt HOA president learned that some homeowners have connections she never saw coming, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories where entitled people finally face real consequences. Now, let's watch this unfold. This is a story in 3 parts. The violation that revealed how far someone drunk on petty power would go, the confrontation where legal authority replaced neighborhood politics, and the resolution where a master key became the symbol of justice perfectly served. The violation started small, the way these things always do. Linda Whitmore had ruled the Clearwater Shores HOA with an iron fist for 6 years, inventing violations, issuing fines for invisible infractions, and making life miserable for anyone who questioned her authority. But Michael Torres had watched her abuse escalate for months, targeting him specifically after he challenged her at a board meeting. The threatening letters, the fabricated complaints, the harassment. He documented everything, waiting for the moment she'd go too far. And when she decided his locked boathouse was somehow her domain to inspect, that moment finally arrived. The emotional toll of enduring her tyranny. The failed attempts to reason with the board. The breaking point that made a peaceful man decide enough was truly enough. The confrontation happened faster than Linda could process. One moment she was rifling through his property, self-righteous and untouchable. The next, a uniformed deputy was asking her very pointed questions about breaking and entering. The power shift was immediate and absolute. Her stammered excuses, his brother-in-law's calm professionalism. The moment she realized the master key she'd used without permission was about to unlock consequences she'd never imagined, the resolution brought justice swift and undeniable. The charges filed, the emergency HOA board meeting, the cascade of complaints from other homeowners who finally found their courage. Watching someone who terrorized an entire neighborhood face the legal system she thought she was above. The aftermath that proved sometimes the entitled don't just lose their power, they lose everything they built on abuse. And the peace that settled over Clearwater Shores, when residents realized they could finally breathe again. Here's exactly how it happened. Michael Torres had purchased his lakefront property in Clearwater Shores back in 2010, drawn by the private boat dock and the peace of morning mist rising off the water. At 42, he'd spent 20 years studying marine ecosystems for the state environmental agency, and his small boathouse contained thousands of dollars in research equipment, personal watercraft, and the solitude he needed after long days in the field. He was methodical, quiet, and respected boundaries, qualities that made him a good neighbor and a devoted father to his 2 teenage daughters. His wife, Elena, a high school chemistry teacher, often joked that Michael treated his boathouse like a sacred space, which made sense given the expensive sonar equipment and water testing instruments stored inside. The property was his sanctuary after years of apartment living and career sacrifices. Linda Whitmore had been elected HOA president 6 years earlier, and over time, her leadership had transformed from organized to authoritarian. Michael first noticed the shift 18 months ago when she issued him a warning about his dock being 3 inches beyond regulation positioning, a regulation that didn't exist in any actual HOA documents. He politely corrected her at the next board meeting, showing the bylaws on his tablet. She'd smiled tightly and moved on, but her eyes had promised retaliation. 2 weeks later, Michael received a formal violation notice claiming his boat wasn't stored properly. It was stored identically to 8 other boats in the neighborhood, but his was the only citation. The fine was $150. He paid it, thinking that would end things. It didn't single quotes T. Over the next year. Linda escalated systematically. She cited him for grass being a quarter-inch too long, the day after his lawn service had been delayed by rain. She claimed his mailbox color violated aesthetic standards. It was the same color as when he bought the house. She sent certified letters threatening legal action over his dock lights being excessively bright, though they were the same solar-powered fixtures installed by the previous owner. Each complaint was photographed, documented, appealed, and ultimately dismissed by the board, but Linda kept coming. Other neighbors started telling Michael they'd experienced similar harassment, but most were too afraid to challenge her. She'd successfully sued 3 homeowners into submission over the past 4 years, and the legal fees alone were enough to bankrupt resistance. The breaking point came on a humid August morning. Michael had been conducting field research upstate for 3 days, and Elena had taken their daughters to visit her parents in Charlotte. He arrived home exhausted, ready for a quiet weekend. When he walked down to check on his boathouse Friday afternoon, he found the padlock damaged and scratched, as if someone had tried to pry it open but failed. His security camera showed Linda Whitmore standing outside his boathouse at 2:17 p.m. on Wednesday, examining the lock, tugging on it, walking around the structure taking photos. She come back Thursday morning with what looked like paperwork, tried the door again, then left. The footage was crystal clear. Michael's hand shook as he watched her casual violation of his privacy. Her entitled assumption that she could access his private structure whenever she wanted. Michael called Elena that night and explained what had happened. Her response was immediate. Call Marcus. Marcus Chun was Elena's younger brother, a deputy sheriff with 12 years on the force who'd helped Michael install the security system 2 years earlier. Michael hesitated. He didn't want to abuse the family connection, but Elena was firm. This isn't about favors. This is about someone repeatedly targeting you and now trying to break into your property. That's not HOA business. That's law enforcement business. She was right. If they wanted to play games with his private property, Michael would show them exactly what rules actually mattered. Michael spent Friday night reviewing every piece of documentation he collected over 18 months, organizing timestamps, printing photos, preparing. If Linda came back, he'd be ready. And on Tuesday morning at 11:43 a.m., she did exactly that, this time with a crowbar, and the HOA master key. Michael was in his home office, reviewing water quality reports when his phone buzzed with the security alert. He pulled up the camera feed and watched Linda Whitmore's BMW pull up to his dock. She stepped out wearing her typical uniform of expensive casual wear and oversized sunglasses, carrying a leather folder and something metallic that caught the sunlight. She walked directly to his boathouse, tried the padlock, then produced a crowbar from behind a decorative planter. For 30 seconds, she worked at forcing the lock mechanism, clearly frustrated. Then she pulled out a key, the HOA master key that was supposed to be used only for emergencies, and with board approval, the padlock was Michael's personal lock. But Linda used the master key to open the secondary entrance lock that the HOA had required all waterfront structures to have for emergency access. The door swung open. She stepped inside his private property. Michael's text to Marcus was immediate. She's inside now. Then he grabbed his keys and headed for the dock, his phone recording as he walked. Marcus's response came 10 seconds later. Stay outside. Don't confront. I'm 7 minutes out. Michael positioned himself near the dock entrance where he could see the boathouse door, but wasn't blocking her exit. He could hear Linda inside, moving things, opening cabinets. His jaw clenched. 4 minutes passed like hours. Then he heard the distinctive sound of a vehicle approaching fast Marcus's patrol car. Lights off, but moving with purpose. Marcus stepped out in full uniform, his expression professionally neutral. He'd been a deputy for 12 years and knew exactly how to handle situations like this. Stay here, he told Michael quietly, then walked toward the boathouse. Sheriff's Department, Marcus called out clearly. "I need whoever's inside this structure to come out immediately." The sounds inside stopped. Silence. Then Linda appeared in the doorway, squinting against the sunlight, her confident expression faltering when she saw the uniform. "Oh, Deputy, thank goodness you're here," she started, her voice sweet and rehearsed. "I'm Linda Whitmore, HOA president, and I've been trying to conduct a routine inspection of—" "Ma'am?" "Step out of the structure completely," Marcus interrupted, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. Linda complied, clearly recalculating. "I'm going to need to see identification, and I need to know what you're doing inside a locked private building that doesn't belong to you." Linda's smile tightened. "As I said, I'm the HOA president. We have master keys for all waterfront structures for safety inspections. This is completely within my authority." She gestured at Michael with dismissive irritation. "Mr. Torres has been uncooperative with multiple violations, and I have every right to—" "You have a right to access a locked private structure without the owner's consent or a warrant?" Marcus asked, pulling out his notepad. Linda blinked. "The HOA bylaws clearly state—" Marcus shook his head slightly. "Ma'am, HOA bylaws don't supersede property law. Did you have Mr. Torres's permission to enter this building today?" Linda's expression shifted from confident to uncertain. "I don't need his permission. I'm the—" She stopped, seeming to realize her words weren't helping. Michael stepped forward, his phone still recording. "Deputy Chun, for the record, I did not give Mrs. Whitmore permission to enter my boathouse today or any day. I've asked her repeatedly to stay off my private dock." Marcus turned back to Linda. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to provide that master key, your identification, and any documentation showing you had authority to force entry into this locked structure." Linda's face flushed. "Force entry? I used a key." Marcus glanced at the damaged padlock, then at the crowbar sitting on the dock where Linda had set it down. "And the crowbar?" Linda followed his gaze, her expression crumbling. "I was? The lock was stuck." Marcus pulled out his radio. "This is Unit 47. I need another unit at 2847 Lakeshore Drive for a possible breaking and entering in progress." He looked at Linda Whitmore, whose designer sunglasses couldn't hide her growing panic. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to place your hands behind your back." Linda's voice rose. "You can't be serious. I'm the HOA president. This is a civil matter." Marcus remained calm, professional. "Breaking into a locked structure without permission isn't a civil matter, ma'am. Turn around, please." Linda looked at Michael desperately. "You're going to let him do this over a routine inspection?" Michael's voice was steady after 18 months of documented harassment. "You broke into my property. That's not HOA business anymore." Marcus used Linda's own HOA master key to lock the boathouse door after ensuring nothing inside was disturbed. Then he placed handcuffs on Linda Whitmore while reading her rights. Her protests echoed across the lake, drawing neighbors to their windows. Michael stood silently, his phone capturing every word, his expression showing not triumph but exhausted relief. "Mr. Torres, I'll need you to come to the station to file a formal complaint," Marcus said professionally, treating Michael exactly as he would any other citizen. "Bring any documentation of prior incidents with Mrs. Whitmore." Michael nodded. He had 18 months' worth. As the second patrol car arrived and Linda Whitmore was placed in the back seat, still arguing about her authority and her rights, Michael finally allowed himself to breathe. The master key that Linda had used to violate his privacy was now evidence in a case that would end her reign. The charges came swiftly. Breaking and entering, criminal trespass, and after the prosecutor reviewed Michael's documentation, misuse of HOA authority for harassment. Linda Whitmore posted bail within hours, her husband, a real estate attorney, immediately launching into damage control mode. But the story had already spread through Clearwater Shores like wildfire. Neighbors who'd watched the patrol cars, who'd heard Linda's protests across the water, who'd suffered their own violations and fines under her leadership, suddenly found their voices. By Thursday, the HOA board had received formal complaints from 11 different homeowners, each one detailing similar patterns of harassment, fabricated violations, and intimidation tactics. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for Saturday morning at the community clubhouse. Michael arrived with Elena and Marcus, who attended as a private citizen, but whose uniform was still fresh in everyone's memory. The room was packed -40-7 residents in a space meant for 30. Linda sat in the front row with her attorney husband, her expression tight and controlled, but her eyes betrayed genuine fear. Board member David Patterson, who'd served quietly for 8 years, called the meeting to order. His voice shook slightly as he addressed the room. "We're here to discuss the recent incident involving our president and to hear from community members about their experiences with HOA enforcement." One by one, residents stood and told their stories. Margaret Chun, a retired teacher, described receiving $3,000 in fines over 2 years for violations that other homes didn't receive. She questioned Linda's landscaping contract choices at a meeting. Robert Williams, a veteran who'd lived in Clearwater Shores for 15 years, detailed how Linda had threatened to foreclose on his home over a supposedly unpaid fine he had receipts proving he paid. Jessica Martinez showed photos of her children's swing set that Linda claimed violated setback requirements, the same setback where Linda's own pool house sat, 6 inches closer to the property line. The testimonies continued for 90 minutes, each one painting a picture of systematic abuse of power, selective enforcement, and personal vendettas disguised as HOA governance. Linda's attorney tried to interrupt several times, claiming the meeting violated proper procedures, but the board voted to continue. Finally, David Patterson addressed Linda directly. "Mrs. Whitmore, in light of the legal charges pending against you and the evidence presented today of selective and potentially retaliatory enforcement of HOA rules, the board votes to immediately suspend you from your position as president pending the outcome of your legal case." The vote was unanimous. Even the board members Linda had thought were loyal abandoned her. Linda stood, her face flushed with rage and humiliation. "You can't do this to me. I've given 6 years to this community. I've protected property values, maintained standards." Her voice cracked. "You're all cowards who needed someone to make the hard decisions, and now you're throwing me away." Michael spoke for the first time. "You didn't make hard decisions, Linda. You made my life hell because I corrected you in a meeting. You fabricated violations, harassed my family, and broke into my property. That's not leadership. That's abuse." The room remained silent. Linda looked around at faces that had once feared her, now showing nothing but cold indifference. She grabbed her purse and left, her husband following with his own expression of defeat. 2 weeks later, Linda Whitmore pleaded no contest to criminal trespass and was sentenced to 6 months probation, 100 hours community service, and ordered to pay Michael $4,500 in restitution for legal fees and damages. She resigned permanently from the HOA board. The broader consequences rippled outward. The board hired an independent management company to review all violations issued over the past 3 years. They discovered that Linda had collected over $47,000 in questionable fines, many of which were refunded to homeowners. Her landscaping company contract was terminated when the board found she'd been receiving kickbacks. 3 homeowners whose properties had gone to foreclosure proceedings successfully sued the HOA for wrongful enforcement. Linda and her husband quietly listed their house for sale in November. By December, they were gone. 2 months after the incident, Michael sat on his dock on a Sunday morning, coffee in hand, watching his daughter's kayak across the calm water. The boathouse stood secure behind him, the new lock gleaming in the sunlight. His equipment was undisturbed. His peace was restored. Elena sat beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "You okay?" she asked. Michael nodded. "I'm better than okay. I'm free." Other neighbors had stopped by throughout the week, quiet apologies for not standing up sooner, grateful handshakes, relieved smiles. The community felt different now, lighter. David Patterson had taken over as president and immediately implemented transparent enforcement policies and complaint review processes. Michael had learned something profound through the ordeal. Sometimes justice doesn't come from playing nice or hoping someone will change. Sometimes it comes from documentation, patience, and knowing exactly when to stop accepting abuse. He'd spent 18 months collecting evidence, not because he wanted revenge, but because he knew that entitled people rarely stop until they're forced to face real consequences. Linda Whitmore had built her power on fear and intimidation, never imagining that one of her targets might have connections, resources, and the patience to let her destroy herself. As Michael sat there watching the morning light dance on the water, he smiled. Because justice, whether it arrived in handcuffs or simply in the quiet reclaiming of peace, was equally satisfying. The master key that had once symbolized Linda's overreach now sat in an evidence locker. A perfect reminder that some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. 3 states away in Portland, Oregon, middle school librarian Diana. Foster was shelving books when her new neighbor strode in demanding. She trimmed the oak tree that blocked his view. Diana smiled gently and pulled out the century-old property survey showing the tree was protected by city heritage laws she'd helped preserve as a former city council member. "Please, keep making demands about my protected oak," she said softly. "I'd love to explain property law to someone who thinks volume equals authority." His confident expression faltered. But that's a story for another time.